Beginning in 2014, Operation Lava Jato, or Car Wash, exposed a vast network of illicit payments and systemic bribery within Brazil's state-run oil company and its private partners. It remains the largest corruption investigation in the country's history, involving billions in laundered funds. Central to this network were the leaders of construction giants OAS and Odebrecht. While these executives coordinated massive fraudulent negotiations in secret, they were simultaneously issuing formal management reports that projected an image of absolute corporate integrity. These reports explicitly claimed a commitment to the integrity and well-being of partners, and insisted that sustainability and high ethical standards were part of the organization's DNA. While these documents appear to be generic public relations, they contain quantifiable evidence. The specific vocabulary used in these reports serves as a psychological trail, revealing the true personality traits of the men who wrote them. Taking standard corporate disclosures at face value prevents financial analysts and regulators from identifying the specific psychological markers that precede systemic fraud. To analyze these texts, researchers use the upper echelons theory. This framework provides a scientific baseline for extracting behavioral data from formal corporate communications. The theory's core premise is that a corporation is a reflection of its top managers. An executive's personality, values, and past experiences dictate the strategic choices they make for the firm. These deep-seated traits unavoidably leak into the leader's vocabulary. The annual report effectively becomes a data stream of the executive's underlying psychology. Forensic analysis of the Lava Jato reports focused on the dark triad of personality traits. Specifically, researchers looked for linguistic signatures of narcissism and Machiavellianism. These profiles represent distinct styles of manipulation. Narcissism is characterized by grandiosity and a need for admiration, while Machiavellianism is defined by cold, strategic calculation and the use of deceit to reach personal goals. By applying this lens, corporate discourse shifts from a marketing exercise into a quantifiable artifact of leadership psychology. In the corporate environment, the narcissistic executive is defined by exhibitionism and a sense of superiority. They view successful transactions and organizational growth as personal victories, often merging their personal identity with the company's brand. The Machiavellian executive operates with absolute emotional detachment. They utilize cynicism and flattery as calculated tools, viewing interpersonal relations as a series of maneuvers to obtain resources or influence. This chart illustrates where these profiles overlap. Both share a capacity for manipulation, dishonesty, and the ability to influence others without regard for social damage. Machiavelli argued that a ruler must separate emotion from decision-making. In this framework, the one who guides emotions without being guided by them becomes untouchable. To a Machiavellian leader, the emotional outbursts of others are not threats, they are psychological vulnerabilities. They analyze the anger or panic of subordinates to find the buttons they can push to maintain control. These psychological parameters provide the baseline for identifying the hidden patterns embedded in the official OAS and Odebrecht reports. Researchers performed forensic text mining on the management reports of OAS and Odebrecht from 2012 to 2015, the period immediately preceding the arrests of their top executives. The methodology utilized en vivo software to perform a word frequency analysis, aggregating the vocabulary choices made by the leadership teams. The 2012 OAS report reveals a distinct clustering of terms. Vocabulary associated with grandiosity and self-promotion, specifically our, growth, and president, dominates the discourse. In the 2013 report, the lexical pattern remains identical. The continued visual prominence of these terms shows a personality profile that does not adjust its self-evaluation even as external market pressures increase. This multi-year data for Odebrecht reveals the same repetition. Terms like development and investments cluster around the word our, indicating a persistent behavioral trait across the entire leadership team. Effort. Instead, it functions as a linguistic personification, where the leader merges their natural person with the legal entity. They do not see a limit between themselves and the company they manage. High frequencies of self-referential and superlative terms serve as quantifiable indicators of the narcissistic executive control observed in the Lava Jato reports. The analysis then shifted from word counts to discursive practice, the semantic meaning used to frame the company's situation to the public. Between 2012 and 2015, the global economy was experiencing a severe downturn, and the internal reality of these companies was defined by the secret orchestration of billions in illicit transfers. Yet, the reports described this period as a moment of expansion and a trajectory of continuous growth. The leaders projected absolute organizational stability while the crisis was actively unfolding. This is the Machiavellian tactic of weaponized calm. By remaining emotionally still in a room full of storms, the leader appears as the only rational authority. Projecting detachment and stability during an objective crisis creates an aura of self-sufficiency. This hypnotizes stakeholders into believing the leader is immune to the pressures affecting everyone else. This calculated stability fulfills a core Machiavellian law: never reveal your strategic depth. By appearing naturally calm, the executive ensures the public does not suspect the complex maneuvers occurring behind the scenes. In corporate reporting, extreme, detached optimism during a crisis is frequently a calculated mechanism used to mask illicit operations. The reports also show a sudden semantic focus on social well-being, environmental integrity, and the perfection of labor conditions. This reflects emotional mirroring. People generally trust those who reflect their own values and emotional state. Machiavellian leaders mirror the public's moral language to bypass their defenses. By adopting the vocabulary of integrity and social progress, they disarm regulators and gain unearned trust. This textual mirroring is purely tactical. It is a performance of empathy, designed to provide the image of alignment with public interest, without any underlying ethical commitment. Sudden, uncharacteristic alignments with public moral concerns in corporate reports are frequently strategic disguises, shielding low ethical practices. By synthesizing the narcissistic vocabulary and the Machiavellian semantics found in the reports, we see the complete profile of the fraudulent executive. Narcissistic grandiosity provides the mask of superiority and stability, while Machiavellian tactics weaponize that mask to manipulate and deceive. This overlap creates the specific environment necessary for systemic fraud. The Lavajato executives were masters of this psychological intersection, utilizing language that simultaneously fed their personal ego and misled the state. This leads to the DNA of the company paradigm, where the leader's personal identity consumes the corporate entity. When a corporate entity becomes indistinguishable from a dark triad leader, institutional decisions are no longer guided by market logic, but by the psychological impulses of the executive. The Lavajato case proves that standard financial spreadsheet analysis is insufficient when tracking corporate leaders who actively manipulate the data stream. Analysts must adopt an adversarial mindset when reading future disclosures. Corporate language is not a neutral source of information, but a forensic field. Look for the dual footprints, an extreme frequency of self-referential, grandiose terms, combined with a detached, mirrored emotional semantics during a crisis. Understanding the laws of emotional manipulation strips these executives of their primary weapon, their ability to remain unreadable to the public. By treating sanitized corporate language as forensic evidence, analysts can detect the psychological precursors of fraud before the financial collapse occurs.